at one of our meetings this morning, the issue came up of resistance to experience. And there was really quite a lot of exploration around about it, and I thought I'd come back and kind of report to you about the value of exploring, resistance to what is in your life. And the reason that I'm bringing it is because, you know, I know from my own experience, and I've seen it in so many countless other people, and upon deeper kind of a spiritual exploration, resistance to what is, resistance to the experience that we're having, is almost like the main pin, I think somebody might call it, the main pin, the place upon which everything hangs on the spiritual journey. It's the place that Krishnamurti might speak of I don't mind what happens. It's the place that Tagore, the poet, might refer to as, in order to know God, you must welcome everything. And so, you know, put in a modern context or a contemporary context, you could say that resistance to what is the doorway, is the main obstacle, if that's a good word to use, which I'm not sure. The self, the ego self, has established its knowing, established its territory, its existence on knowing what it wants and knowing what it doesn't want, unconsciously or consciously, and, you know, cutting things up, separating up the world into the good bits and the bad bits, and the wanted bits and the unwanted bits, and the bits that are working for me and the bits that aren't working for me. Actually, on resistance and whatever the opposite of resistance is, going with or approving of. And, you know, while on the level of, you know, the person, the self, the ego self, you know, that sounds pretty valid, really. I'm not going to surrender to or stop resisting what I don't like, what I've, you know, come to not like over the many years. Why would I do that? The ego self asks. And I mean, we've got a history, the whole backlog of our journey in this life, you know, is measured or built by that very thing, right? By the very, you know, separating up what we like and what we don't like, what we want, what we think is good for us and what we think is not good for us. It all sounds very reasonable until you get onto the deep spiritual path, where resistance is, it has to be looked into. The reason for the resistance, what the resistance to what is happening. And when I say what is happening, I tend to usually mean what is arising within, or what we're being met with on the outside, what the trigger is. You know, we get easily triggered, you know, which is an extraordinary thing, but, you know, when we're triggered, we're lost in so many different ways, because we lose self-awareness, we lose our ability to discern, we lose our equanimity, we lose our calmness, we lose our relaxation. We're lost really, and we're just kind of in Pavlovian style, reacting, and if, in some people's cases, to reacting to take regrettable actions. The antithesis, the opposite, if you like, of non-resistance. The opposite of non-resistance, you could say, is triggered. And the dance between these two things is an essential dance to inquire into. I'm not going to give any glib kind of answers here, but I would encourage a real deep and honest, soul-searching look into what you resist and why you resist it. And on the superficial level, you can do the dance or justify it and stuff, But as it gets deeper into the more honest spiritual inquiry, so much of the resistance is built around the need for control. If I stop resisting what I'm experiencing, what does that mean for me? Who am I? What happens to myself? What is, it's kind of founded on its resistance as much as on its preference. And, it's a real problem. What does it mean to let go? What does it mean to surrender? Surrendering control. Lack of resistance is the giving up of control, or the idea of control. Because underneath that non-resistance is our capacity to go with, to fall into a deeper trust, to start seeing life as being almost a benevolent force, instead of imagining that the self has to control its way through life, because if I don't control my way through life, control my insides, control my thoughts, control my emotions, control my environment, if I don't, then it's all going to go to shit, and I could well die or suffer so very terribly, or chaos would ensue, or I'd just be out of control. And all of these things lurk, they lurk deeper down as subconscious, unconscious, patterns that we've inherited, and a lot of those need to be rooted out, dug out, because most of them are erroneous. Most of our resistance is erroneous, is built on false foundations, is actually A, erroneous, and B, unnecessary. And there's a lot more freedom when we start to see our resistance is not supporting us. Our resistance is actually imprisoning us, keeping us trapped. I saw this. And when I really saw it clearly in a true way, and honestly, I've been beaten by the universe in trying to give me the message millions and millions of times, as I'm sure you have. And the only thing I'd say about me is I'm dogged, and I've just been keeping on going. By and by, I sort of one day saw that my resistance to what was happening was actually only creating a prison for me. And by letting go of resistance to what is happening, what is arising, a doorway opens to more freedom. You don't lose anything. I haven't lost any of my equanimity. I haven't lost any of my capacity to not do what I don't want to do. In fact, it's grown because it's deeper, because there's more awareness. Actually, letting go of resistance, opens up a whole new vista of awareness, of capacity to see life, to see the patterns of life. It's a profound doorway, really. Just through becoming increasingly aware of where one is holding on to the fight and to the argument. This shouldn't be happening and I'm going to resist it. To the point of our own emotions. We're not even talking about something on the outside, in the outside world, although we could be. But it's like this, isn't it? It's this argument, damn it, I know what's good for me, I know what's right for me, and it's got to be like this. It's my way or the highway, and it's unfortunate to realize and see that ultimately, at least, only leads to a kind of prison of the self, and to soften into an ever deepening non-resistance to what is arising specifically and particularly, opens up a bigger doorway of awareness and ultimately grace and, a more open vista. So, I just wanted to say, open up that conversation with yourself. Look into it deeply, deeply. Because the less resistance there is, the more flowing one can be. You flow with the river, instead of imagining or trying desperately to control the river, because you can't control the river. Most of life is out of control anyway. Most of the resistance is futile. As they say, resistance is futile, if you've ever watched Star Trek. Okay, bye-bye.